They've been described variously as the Swedish model, free schools, or more accurately, as new academies. They're designed to increase parental choice by allowing groups of parents, teachers or others to open new schools. But are they just a gimmick, or will they transform the school system?
If you look at somewhere like Sweden or America, after these have been going for 15 years, then you're starting to see thousands of new schools.
They could be set up in areas that don't necessarily need more school places, and they will almost certainly take money away from existing schools, and I think a lot of parents sense a great unfairness in that.
I think once they start to see the reality of the amount of work and effort, a lot will fall by the wayside.
This may all just be a building site now, but from September it'll be opening as the new Jewish Community Secondary School. It all began when a group of parents in North London felt dissatisfied with the school choices available to them. So they decided to open their own school. As a parent-initiated school, the Jewish Community Secondary School, or JCOS for short, fits the model of the government's free schools policy. But in fact, this school, a £50 million project, came about under earlier legislation that was similarly designed to boost parental choice.
A questionnaire went round to parents through synagogues and other movements asking whether people would be interested in a cross-communal Jewish secondary school, a state secondary school. Because at that time, and even up to the moment that JCOS opens in September, there was no choice. All Jewish secondary schools that exist are orthodox in ethos, and they're very good schools, but there was no choice for a cross-communal which covers and respects all strands of Judaism.
For Jonathan Fingerhut and his fellow campaigners in North London, it's taken years to achieve the new school. So long, indeed, that it's too late for his own children to go there. As Jonathan found, opening a new school is not all that simple.
This project, we learnt, was not one project, it was about 10 projects. It's an architectural project. Even if you're taking over an existing building, you have to refurbish it and take into account the needs of a school. It's a financial project, so you need to have very, very good finances and projections and people who can do spreadsheets till the cows come home. It's a marketing project. People think that just because you're opening a new school, even now with the free schools, that people will come to it.
I mean, the impression one's got from the talk about this policy is that it's a group of parents can get together. If they're not happy with the provision of schools in their area, they can quite quickly get together, open a new school, and then maybe bring in a private management company to run it. But is it really that easy?
I think without the private management company, no. I think they should come and talk to me before they embark on it, because it really, really is unbelievably time-consuming to get it to excellence. And I think nobody at the moment who's been talking about how to open an excellent school. There seems to be this rush to open new parent-promoted schools, but I'm not sure what thought has been given to make sure that it's the best available.
The school Jonathan helped to create is already oversubscribed for its September 2010 opening. It'll be the first Jewish school in the UK that welcomes students from all Jewish and indeed non-Jewish backgrounds. But in a parent-led school like this, could there be conflict with the educational professionals, such as its new head teacher?
There shouldn't be in the long term, because what the parents should be doing is recruiting a head teacher who shares their vision. What the head teacher then does is put their vision into practice. It's not the head teacher's job to write the ethos for the school, it's the head teacher's role to implement the ethos. If the recruitment of the head teacher is right, then the vision of the parents should be able to be translated into the school.
From a teacher's point of view, what will be different for them working in a parent-led school?
Well, the first thing is that teachers coming to JCOS are writing the curriculum, and that's hugely exciting. The new national curriculum gives teachers far more flexibility than it ever used to do. The second thing that's different for them is that they're only teaching Year 7, and teachers are used to teaching a whole range. Now, we're going to bring in a sixth form in the third year, a small sixth form. What they are going to get is the opportunity from the start to shape a school. And every teacher, from the newly qualified teachers right through to the deputy heads, have whole school responsibilities and opportunities that they wouldn't have in a school elsewhere. Because everything we do, we have to create from scratch.
The coalition government wants many more schools created from scratch and is legislating to make it easier to create these so-called free schools. So what exactly are they? Well, free schools are funded directly by central government at a similar rate per student as neighbouring schools, and they're free to pupils. They can be opened by parents, teachers or other organisations such as charities or universities. They'll have the same freedoms over the curriculum and paying conditions as academies. They will not be able to select pupils by ability nor charge top-up fees. A charity, the New Schools Network, receives government funding to help groups seeking to open new schools. Do you have any sense of what proportion of these will be different schools, either faith schools or Montessori, as opposed to those that are simply where people want another mainstream school?
It's difficult to know. We've actually been quite surprised, to be honest, that fairly few groups with a faith ethos have been getting in touch with us. We expected far more, and actually the vast majority of groups that have been getting in touch with us do not particularly want a faith school. We have had quite a number who are looking for things like a Montessori ethos, but I'd say the majority, while they want to innovate within a sort of mainstream idea. So many of them, for example, want to have longer school days and longer school years, the way that quite a number of charter schools in America do, have perhaps a greater focus on aspiration and academic attainment and take some of those lessons, but they don't want to do something completely different.
Proposers of a new free school will have to persuade the Education Secretary that they're suitable persons to run a school. They must demonstrate they have democratic aims and values and can deliver them. They must prove there is a demand for places at the school and that they have both suitable premises for teaching pupils and a financially viable business plan. What happens when a group of parents, very keen for better provision for their own children, they get the school going and then after a few years their children have moved on and they might lose the interest? What happens then?
Well, actually the vast majority of parents that have contacted us do not in fact want to run the school. They want to promote the existence of the school, they want to be influencing what goes on in the school, but quite often what happens is they want to then partner with groups of teachers, educational organisations, charities who will run the school on their behalf. Most parents don't feel that they have the expertise or the time to run a school day to day. It's not what they want, they just want to see a good local school for their children, and that's one of the things that we help them do.
And it's also possible, isn't it, for these management firms to make profits?
In the state sector at the moment, there are an awfully large number of profit companies which are operating. You have profit companies doing the entirety of Ofsted inspections, you have them, in some cases, in fact, running the entire local authority school. I would expect exactly the same system would apply to free schools, and yes, some of the organisations that are looking at partnering with parents are private companies.
I think it'll be private sector companies that run most of the schools, and I think that's quite explicit if you look at the New Schools Network's small print, which says to parent groups, you get the campaign going to do it, you make the case, but then we recognise that actually setting up a school will be very difficult for you to do unless you've got a lot of money to pay lawyers and accountants and so on. So we will put you in touch with a partner and look at the partners. Well, they're mostly either charitable trusts who are currently running academies or private sector companies who will look for outsourced contracts to manage the school. And I think that's the long-term aim of this government, which is to put as much of the private sector into private hands. And this will be one very quick way of doing it.
In Sweden, free schools can be run by private for-profit companies like Kunskapsskolan, which are now gaining a toehold running academies in the UK. Evidence for their impact on academic standards overall in Sweden is mixed, and the head of the Swedish National Agency for Education has said they have not led to better results there, although others say they've boosted parental choice. But what will the accountability be in the UK?
The contract between the school and the department, the funding agreement, will be between the trust and the department. So they will maintain accountability. They will be, for example, the parents or the trustees of the school, and they will be able to say to any organisation that's working with them, this isn't good enough, this needs to change. And that trust itself will be held accountable, we would hope quite rigidly accountable by the department for the results they get.
But accountability and the legal duties of free schools on issues like special needs concerns people like Fiona Miller, Chair of Governors of a mainstream school.
One of my objections to independent state schools as opposed to maintained state schools is that they're not covered by the body of law that covers the maintained sector. And I think it is a very, very important distinction which a lot of people don't fully understand. They're only covered by the contracts that they have with the government, and we don't yet know whether these contracts for the free schools will protect parents' and pupils' rights in areas like admissions, special needs, exclusions, the right to place pupil from the hard to place panel and so on into these schools. And if they don't incorporate those rights with a suitable mechanism for enforcing them, into their obligations. I think what you'll see is them actually finding ways of not teaching the more difficult children, and the schools that aren't the free schools will then have to pick up the pieces.
Under Labour government legislation, it was already possible to set up new schools, but so far only 2 parent-initiated schools have come to fruition. So what lessons have they learned that could help future promoters of free schools and the teachers who will work in them?
There are a few lessons I would suggest. I think the weakness of parent-led schools, of which we're only the second from the previous government, is that unlike new academies, there isn't the infrastructure support for the parents building the school. So from everything from planning permission to fundraising to liaising with local authorities to working with architects, putting out tenders, whereas if you're an academy you would be given consultant and expertise support to help you through each of those processes. As a parent-led school, these parents have had to rely on their own expertise.
What would you say to teachers who are looking on, who have no experience of the new free school concept? Would you say they should leap in, or are there things they should check, or what would you say to them? What advice would you give?
To teachers I would say, look at the vision. Is it a vision that you want? Is it a vision that you support? The second thing is that when you're coming to a brand new school, you have to accept that your responsibilities may actually be wider than just delivering your subjects.
With free schools now a government priority, and once legislation has been passed to simplify the planning laws, it looks very likely there will be many more than just the 2 parent-initiated schools we've had so far. But how many more? How many of these schools do you think we're going to get, and what sort of groups do you think we'll be able to push them through?
Not as many as one might think. It's one thing to have an enthusiastic, yeah, we'd love a local school, we're not happy with a local provision. I think once they start to see the reality of the amount of work and effort, even if you're subcontracting, because that doesn't obviate the responsibility of the people opening it, a lot will fall by the wayside.
In the next programme in the Need to Know series, I'll be looking at the government's new proposals to improve discipline in schools.
Teachers have the right and responsibility for the safety of all students in the school, and if restraint is called for, then teachers are prepared and trained to do those things these days.
Is it reasonable for them to be able to search you and your possessions?
Yeah, most of the time, yeah. It's because they don't frustrate you or anything. They just take you to one side and say, look, we just want to look through your bag and that's it. We don't want any trouble.
They see a fight, they go and try and protect the interests of pupils and find themselves accused of assault.